Hey there. In this video, we're going to be looking at the replace value and replace error transformations in Power Query. So let's say that we're starting with some data that looks like this. Right now we're in simple toolbar transformations.xlsx, and we're in replace values blanks in the replace values blanks sheet, and here's our data. So let's go ahead and load this into Power Query. We're going to click somewhere on the table, and we're going to load our data from a table. So we've got data that looks like this. So we've got a table that has all the different stores that we've got. And we've got our total sales from this year, our total sales from last year, and our growth. And for the first 4 stores, this works just fine. Unfortunately, for, let's see, the store here on Foster, well, there's total sales from this year, but there's none from last year, probably because it's a new store and there were no sales last year. So when you calculate the growth, you end up dividing by 0, so you get an error here. And here for the store in Camas, well, there's no sales this year or last year. It's probably still under construction. So again, the growth ends up dividing by 0, so we get an error here. So let's say the way we want to handle this, and you don't have to handle it this way, but let's say the way we want to do it is we want to replace the total sales last year and this year where we've got these nulls. We're going to replace those with zeros. And for the growth, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to replace it with a 0. So let's right-click on this column, and we're going to replace values. Right? And so we're going to replace nulls with 0. So if you type in null, it's actually going to be smart enough to know that you don't mean the text string null. What you mean is just blank. And we're going to replace it with a 0. So if I click OK, and there we go. We've replaced the nulls with zeros. Okay. And also, if you look up here in the formula bar, which if you don't have it enabled, you could click on the formula bar there to enable it or disable it. We've replaced the value null, not the text string null like this, but the value null, or blank, with zeros. Okay, let's do the same thing for total sales this year. We're going to right-click. We're going to replace values. And we're going to replace nulls with a 0. Okay, that works just fine. Now let's say for whatever reason, you would probably never ever do this in a business, but let's just say for whatever reason, you've decided that if there's a no, you actually want to replace it with, I don't know, the number 25,000 for no particular reason. Well, again, pretty easy to do. We're going to right-click. We're going to replace values. We're going to replace null with the value 25,000. Okay, there we go. Now we've replaced it with 25,000. You'd probably never do that, but you could. Or let's say that you change your mind, and we want to replace the value 25,000 with 0. Well, we can add another step on top of this one. We're going to replace values. We're going to replace 25,123 with the value 0, because we think from a business point of view that makes a lot more sense. Boom. Okay, there we go. And finally, we're going to replace the errors over here again with zeros. So we're going to click on this column. We're going to right-click on it. We're not going to replace value. We're going to replace errors. So anywhere there's an error, we're going to replace it with something. Well, what are we going to replace it with? Well, let's just replace it with 0. Because we're going to say, in those situations, mathematically speaking, or statistically speaking or something, there really isn't a growth. It is undefined, but we're just going to call it 0 because that makes sense to us. So we're going to replace all errors with zeros. Okay. There we go. We've replaced it with zeros. And we're all done. Okay. I hope that was helpful, and I will see you next video. Hey there, quick addendum. There was one thing that I forgot to do, one example I did not do, and I want to do it real quick. Here we've got the state for all of our different stores, and we've got Oregon and we've got Washington State. Now, if we were a national chain, we might want to differentiate between Washington State and Washington, D.C., but if we're a Northwest chain, that's probably not going to matter very much. So we want to replace every instance of Washington State with just Washington. So let's go do that real quick. So we're going to right-click on State. We're going to replace values. Well, what are we going to replace? Well, we're going to replace Washington State with Washington. Like that. And click OK. And all done. Okay, that's it. I will see you next video.